Why UFC? Why do you make me do this? I don't even like Magomed Ankalaev that much. To me, he has no personality, and apart from the Johnny Walker win, he's not that interesting in the cage. He's about as interesting as the blank space in between the sponsorship signs, but goddamn, no one else is going to be dumb enough to say this and tank their channel, but I guess I will. And God knows that Dougie's Little Corner is already a struggling channel to get off the ground, but Magomed Ankalaev is the one that deserves the next shot at the light heavyweight belt. And I'm going to explain why in this video, and I hate to have to be the one to say this, but he does deserve this. Plus, we are also going to be talking about the supposed Dagestani privilege in this video. And of course, we're going to be talking about Jamal Hill as well. So that also kills me, to be honest, because I make these videos because I love MMA. I love it, and I love the UFC as an organization. And in all of these videos that I have ever made, only one fighter has ever acknowledged that my videos even exist, which to me is massive because, you know, I have a small channel. There's not many people that watch these videos. So the fact that even one fighter or even one fighter's marketing team went and liked one of my videos ever is huge to me. And guess who that fighter was? It was Jamal Hill. You have no idea. That means so much to just a drywaller like me that has just a regular blue collar business that grinds it out every day. To know that like Jamal Hill even just saw the title and gave it a thumbs up gives me some sort of traction. So it hurts me to say this to what I consider my best friend in the sport. But if we were mates, this is the kind of person I am. If we were mates, I would tell him this to his face. So I'm going to have to say it now, right? And also, what's more and more like relevant here is that Poatan has said that he wants to break his record and be the fastest defending champion. And if that's true, I mean, he wants to go Hill then Ankalaev, but if that's true and he wants to be the fastest champion to ever defend the belt back to back and break another record, then let's do this properly. Let's do Magomed Ankalaev first, yeah? And the reason I say that is because he deserves it, but in MMA, nothing is set in stone until like Buffer is done finishing the call out, yeah? Like we know this, MMA is a constantly changing landscape. What if Izzy makes a comeback and, you know, wins his belt back, and then they decide that they want to do Izzy moving up to fight Pereira at light heavyweight and have that whole entire storyline play out? Like the UFC are not going to say no to that level of pay-per-view sales. And if we do Hill first, then Magomed Ankalaev is going to have to take yet another seat back. And, you know, he's been waiting to have another go at the belt since 2022, right? Now the calendar is starting to move very quickly all of a sudden, and we might hold him up behind another few title fights as the storyline plays out at light heavyweight, which is a very possible thing in this sport. Now look, Magomed Ankalaev fought the closest thing to the proper light heavyweight champion ever since John Jones. And he drew for the vacant belt. He didn't lose it, he drew for it, right? He fought for the belt against Jan Blachowicz, closest thing he could get to the proper champion since John Jones, and had a draw. And since then has gone on to beat Johnny Walker without shooting a takedown. And that's the thing, he chose to stand with Johnny Walker and was better at the stand-up than the rangy striker of Walker. So all of those years of wrestling, plus the devastating KO power that he now has, plus the fact that Ankalaev never lost his title fight, all while being at the top of the light heavyweight division for years, seems to set him up as the rightful #1 contender. Then there's Jamal Hill. And we know that Jamal Hill was the champion. Sorry, my boy Jamal, but I've got to be straight with you. We know that Jamal Hill was the champion, and he was given his chance to fight Glover for the title. And they stepped into that fight, UFC 283. To fight Glover, who was coming off a recent loss, they stepped into the cage in pretty short notice because Dana White made that off a whim. And he stepped into the cage on that title fight at UFC 283. The 7th ranked fighter in the world. He got a bit of a step up. He got a step up at last minute's notice to fight a 42-year-old guy who was coming off a loss, who instantly retired the second that fight was over. Yes, he was a champion, but it's a paper-thin champion, yeah? Whereas Magomed Ankalaev didn't lose his title fight and earned every bit of the way to get there. And since the draw, Magomed Ankalaev has done the work to stay as a #1 contender. He's gone ahead and gotten another win. Since Jamal won his belt, Glover has retired and Jamal has unfortunately had to sit out on injury. But here is where it gets tricky, right? Like, I do like Jamal Hill's style of fighting way more than Magomed Ankalaev's style for fighting. And Jamal Hill is so much more fluid and fun to watch. And yes, Jamal Hill versus Alex Pereira is a sick striking fight. Like, who doesn't want to watch that? But aren't we here to see who the best is? Isn't that why Dana White was losing his mind so much over Islam Makhachev's little quote that he wanted to put up in the Performance Institute? Isn't the UFC about finding out who is the best fighter in the world? Or are we just, I don't know, a weird WWE hybrid? Maybe we are. Maybe the days of the UFC is for the best fighter in the world is truly gone, because we can't even have that conversation anymore. It's like forbidden, or you get bagged out or ripped apart in the comments for saying like, hang on, I thought we were here to see who's the best in the world. And Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira, awesome, fun, really fun fight. But Magomed Ankalaev is the most dangerous guy in that division. So why not put him in there next? And that's the thing, we're talking about this, what is the most fun? What can make the most sales? And this is the last thing that I wanted to talk about. And it's this Dagestani privilege in our community. All that talk about the Dagestani privilege, it needs to stop, right? It's like, it's either Dagestani privilege or they talk about Muslim privilege. And like, I'm not a Muslim here. I'm just looking at this from like a third person, looking at the landscape play out. Look, Bilal Muhammad is Muslim, right? And Magomed Ankalaev is Muslim. And look how hard they have to work to get a title shot. I know there are some Dagestanis that get a lift up in the UFC. I know there are times where the UFC does sell to that crowd, especially when they're going to Abu Dhabi or going to Saudi Arabia. But the UFC is not a locked in on Dagestani privilege machine. The UFC's privilege and Dana White's privilege is about who can sell the most tickets. When they're setting up fighters in France, they put Cyril Gane at the top of the bill and say Cyril Gane is going to get another title shot. When they come to Australia, it's all the Anzacs, Australians and New Zealanders. Look, going to Canada, all the Canadian fighters, especially on the undercard and in the early prelims, they try and set fighters up to get easy wins in the market that they're selling tickets to so they can put on a show for the crowd. The UFC privilege, the Dagestani privilege, is just who can sell the most tickets. And Khabib created that Dagestani privilege narrative because he was so dominant and so undefeated, and the first one from that region to do it, that he captivated all those sales numbers for the UFC. He brought that entire region along with him. And Islam Makhachev gets, I don't know if you can call it privilege. I mean, I guess, you know, having a title shot against Bobby Green, like beating Bobby Green and then being able to fight for the title is privileged. But that's because he's Khabib's sidekick. He's Khabib's little brother. You know, they carry the same audience. But that doesn't really spread out that much further. Everyone else, they might get little leaps up the rankings. You know, they might get shots up the rankings. But there are plenty of other fighters who get shots up the rankings as well because of the region that they're from. That's just the way that the UFC likes to build their talent across the board. How can it have Dagestani Muslim privilege, but then also have Colby Covington privilege at the same time? It does, like, they're just marketing to audiences that they see are marketable to, and they put one person on top of that. That's as easy the way to explain it as there is. Israel Adesanya is on top of the Anzac audience. Volkanovski is there on the Anzac audience. And then all the other Aussies just have to struggle and grind for it like everyone else. It is what it is. So I am not much of a Magomed Ankalaev fan, and quite frankly, I am so much happy to sit down on the weekend and watch Jamal Hill fight Alex Pereira. I really am. But I just wanted to put this out there so that we know that he is the guy that 100% deserves it. And when we sit down to watch Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, we know, and they hold up whoever wins that fight, and he's got the championship belt wrapped around him, and they say, undisputed champion of the world. No, he isn't. No, he isn't. Because the #1 contender is probably sitting in the crowd or probably sitting in Russia somewhere watching it go down so that we can all be entertained. And at least that's out there and it's being said. Type casual all you want in the comments, but it is what it is. And that game of, don't worry, Magomed Ankalaev, you'll get the one after Jamal Hill. You never know. You never know in MMA. This game changes so quick. So I've said my piece. Good luck to Magomed Ankalaev. Maybe he will get the title shot. Dana White bloody hates that guy, so that's too bad. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. Would you rather see Jamal Hill over Magomed Ankalaev next? Or are you a purist? Do you want to have that meritocracy come back to the UFC a little bit? Who do you want to see next for Alex Pereira? And do you think he can actually do a back-to-back turnaround, something within, I don't know, what is the record? 1 month, 2 months? Let me know down in the comments if you know the answer to that. If you've been enjoying these videos, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button down there. Every single one means so much to me. And if you don't like it popping up in your screens anymore in the future, you can always unsubscribe. All good. That's it for me. I will see you all in the next video.